Hello, friends. Welcome back again to another episode of Conservation Stories. I'm Tillery Timmons-Sims, as you know probably by now, and Conservation Stories is supported and funded by the Sand Hill Area Research Association, and we appreciate all of the times that you have tuned in and listened. And I believe that we have released 80 podcasts, and that's pretty amazing, consistently. So pretty much almost every week. And so we keep getting just more and more and better guests. And today we have Hugh Aljoe from the Noble Research Institute, which is a very noble institution. But I don't think that's why you have your
No. And it is Aljoe, just as simple as it
No, not.
It is.
It is not.
It is Aljoe. And
What?
but I answer by about anything. You know,
I'm so sorry.
Aljoe.
I will just have to tell you that I have a friend that's Italian who moved from Chicago to Texas, and her maiden name was DeJulio, and everyone called her DeJulio.
I'll be.
And so I just did the same thing to you. I just made your. So what nationality is Aljoe?
Well, the name itself, the Aljoe, Algoe, Algeo, were all the same surname at one time in Europe.
Okay.
And the story is, as I understand it, is that probably Algeo was the original spelling.
Okay.
It was either Moorish or Spanish back at the end of the Roman Empire.
So see, Spanish.
If people wanted to live, they had to get out of the country, so they moved into the area of France and Germany, which were where my relatives came from, the Alsace region. Then moved, of course, up through. Somehow they ended up in Ireland, and and when they came over from the old world into the new world, all depended on how they wanted to spell it, but Aljoe, Algoe, and Algeo could have been.
But it really was originally a Spanish.
Probably a Spanish surname.
Okay, yeah. So we have a town here called La Mesa.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's probably one of those kind of things.
Yes, ma'am.
So interesting. Well, that is a lot easier to say. So I would have never guessed it was Aljoe. So rabbit trail.
Yes.
Thank you for correcting me.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. So tell us, Hugh, a little bit about your background. You and I have met Lacey and I at several different things, and you guys have been on panels together and stuff, and we have found a lot of camaraderie.
Yes, ma'am.
With you, and have appreciated your wisdom and helping us as not just individually, but as an organization. You've been a good friend.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your time. So give us a bit about Hugh first, and then we're going to move into Noble.
Well, I was raised in Texas, raised out in Roscoe, Texas is where I grew up. Roscoe, Nolan County, and realized early in my life I wasn't going to be a plowboy all my life.
Okay.
I wasn't a cotton farmer. I liked the ranching side. My granddad, when we were little bitty, he always said, "Now, Hugh, when you go to school at Texas A&M and get a degree in agriculture like your uncles did, well, it was set. I didn't know that anybody went anywhere else but at Texas A&M for the longest time, but." No, I ended up going to Texas A&M, getting my first degree in animal science, another one in range science. I had an uncle that ranched over in East Texas, and that's what I really love to do. Had another uncle that actually was the manager of the JA Ranch for about 3 years, but spent most of his career in the ranch trust area for first, the Richburg, Walt Richburg.
Oh, okay.
Is my uncle. And anyway, all that to be said is that I really like the ranching side of things a whole lot better than the farming side. And right out of college, after my master's degree, I had the opportunity to go to work for an international businessman. He had a property just east of College Station. Said he would like for someone to come in that was a little older than his kids that were about to start at Texas A&M, and would like to build a ranch in his retirement days. So that's what we did. We started off with 150 Brahman cows. When I left, we had about 1,400 head of breeding females
Oh,
on
wow.
3,000 acres. So we grew it. He had the land, but he he had a lot of it leased out until I got there. But we built it over about 5-6 years and held it pretty steady at that point. And the late,
What a great opportunity.
it was just so
That's
much to learn
yeah.
in that's
Right.
arena, and then came here, and so my master's was really in range science, grazing management in particular. And
Okay.
it was a great opportunity to kind of learn to put the whole together, the business side, the ranching side, the cattle side into one experience.
That's like building an airplane in the air.
Well, it sort of was, but the nice thing
Feel like
about it
it.
is Mr. Bushhorn, he was the owner, Mr. Bushhorn. He would say, now realize, he goes, Mr. Aljoe, he goes, we want to be very aggressive because I have the money to back it up. So if anything went wrong, he was ready. He had the parachute. He had the parachute. And
That's what I mean. Like, this is very unique opportunity.
it really
Doesn't
was.
usually happen.
We tried. As long as we were aggressive, he wasn't as concerned. But we made all decisions together. We spent a lot of time. He'd spend about 180 days a year here in the U.S. in the spring, and in the fall is when he spent most of his time. But we did a lot of time of walking and talking and planning, looking at the books, looking at the information, and just to better understand what we were doing. But he always told me, so if there was a better opportunity that came along, he says, you're going to get offers. He says, but promise me you won't accept an offer until you and I have discussed it, because I will be honest with you. And so I got the opportunity. I've applied here at Noble. It seemed like it would be a wonderful thing to come up here as a pasture and range consultant and just see what I could do, knowing that, he probably had a better future. Once I learned a little bit more about the Noble Foundation, which is what it was at the time, I applied, had the opportunity to come here. So I brought the opportunity to Mr. Bushhorn, and I said, this is what I've this is what I have an opportunity to go do. So he studied on it, and he came back to me and he says, Mr. Aljoe, I could pay you more money. I want to keep you. He says, but that would be a disservice to you and your family. What you really need to be doing is you need to go to Noble. It'll provide you more opportunity, more growth. And he was correct. So I came up here, and I've been here at Noble Research Institute for 30 years. Came here as a pasture and range consultant, became one of the managers over the consulting teams, then manager over all the consulting teams, and now I'm the director over the ranches that we have here, as well as outreach and partnership opportunities here.
That is 30 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. I mean, you basically have had two jobs.
I've had two jobs, 10 years on the ranch and then 30 years here. Yes, ma'am.
Wow. My goodness. So is the man that you mentioned that owned the ranch, is he still living?
No, ma'am. He passed away here probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I went over and visited him over in Germany, when we knew he was beginning to ail, and went over and had a wonderful visit and reminisced over the good days, and came back here and continued on. But his family, I still talk with his wife. She's a widow, of course. And the daughter, we still stay in communication.
Yeah.
They sold the ranch, back after I left. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow. That's really interesting. Well, I'd never been around Brahma cattle until I was in TAL, Texas Ag Leadership
Yes, ma'am.
Program, and spent some time over there with Dr. Jim Lazarkovich. And do you know Dr. Jim?
I just know of him. I know who he is, but
he's amazing.
Face to face. Yes, ma'am.
He's wonderful. He's wonderful. But he has, that's kind of cattle he raises. And I did see some, we went to ST Genetics where they're doing some, breeding there for a low water cow.
Okay.
Low water, low methane. And they have actually, I think, done a pretty good job of doing that. It's a pretty amazing place. ST Genetics is. So
I'd have to go see that. I have not had the opportunity to visit.
Yeah, that you really would probably enjoy that a lot. So the Noble Research Institute, it was Noble Foundation when you first moved there. What is it?
Okay.
Why is it?
Why is that's probably a better question. Why do we exist? Well,
Right.
we were started back in 1945 by an old man by the name of Lloyd Noble, who'd been successful in a lot of his endeavors. He was a businessman technically, and he partnered up with people that were very knowledgeable in the early days of oil exploration. Noble offshore drilling,
Oh, okay.
horizontal drilling. They were some of the early pioneers into some of that technology.
Okay.
And so the Lloyd Noble, who was our founder, was very interested in the people and the land itself. He was kind of a history buff on the side, loved to visit museums and visit lands. But being an early pioneer of aviation back in the 30s, back when he first got started, and he would see from a bird's eye view, just all the erosion taking place across a lot of the countryside of Oklahoma and other parts of the world on land never had broken to the plow. He experienced the Dust Bowl, he lived through all,
sure.
and he had a passion. He says, all these people that are working for me in my company, the majority of them come off farms and ranches. And the only reason why they're working for me is they can't make a living on the land itself.
Yeah.
And he says, and they truly understand the value of a day's wage for a day's work. And he said, they're the best workers I've got. And he says, I want to be able to give back to the land, because in essence, his family had a hardware store here at the 1900, or at the turn of the 1900s. And when there was a lot of cotton in this part of the country, and then when land played out and then the drought started hitting, people couldn't pay their bills, and they had come to the store credit and
right.
got to the point where they couldn't return it, so they just turned in their note to their land. So they were land rich and cash poor, and then oil hit the region.
Yeah.
So as the success that he had, he wanted he'd give back. So in 1945, he started a little soil testing, just a little soil testing office here in Ardmore, Oklahoma, in conjunction with Oklahoma State University. And that was the beginning. And it makes little recommendations, and people do these little contests where they'd apply fertilizer to their gardens. Saw, lo and behold, you've got these great results. And then people wanted to know, well, what would you recommend on my pastures or on my fields? And in the early 50s, we had a consultation program that had an agronomist, an ag economist, and an animal scientist.
So you're almost like extension, working with, because you're working with the land grant university.
We were at the time, and then when we began to really build larger than just kind of a little extension office, then we separated from OSU. Still worked and worked nicely together. We played nice.
Yeah.
But we wanted we were one of the original integrated resource management entities. Okay. And that's where a lot of the concept had started, was here at Noble.
So for people that are listening, I've heard this term, before and familiar, but other people may not be. So what exactly does that mean?
Well, an integrated resource management means that you've got specialists in each of these different areas of expertise, and you work collectively to help a producer for an outcome that they've described. And so you weigh the pros and the cons of the different alternatives that you might have, and then the producer can decide the direction he wants. But we have to work together. My background is grazing and pasture and range management. Yes, I've got another degree in animal science, but you would pair someone like me with someone that has multiple degrees in animal science, with someone that has multiple degrees in ag economics. And now let's work out the best, most profitable solution relative to the producer's own resources that he's working with.
Fabulous. So you guys, during so I'm trying to, so it was really in the 50s. That's really when the drought was in Oklahoma too, in the 50s?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. The 30s was droughty, and of course the 50s was droughty, and then the 70s. You see the little cycles that occur. Those cycles were relatively consistent until the more recent years. If you go back and look at the study of the weather patterns. But there in the 50s, that was also the time when we were getting started with our research effort. You had a lot of guys that during this drought, they couldn't make any money on wheat. And we were just beginning to breed wheat that could be more tolerant of acid soils, but we were still early. Wheat has a narrow window of pH that it's optimal. And then after that, it's difficult. Lime was hard to come by even back then. So we started a breeding program for a cereal rye called Elbon rye. Was our first release, ELBON, which if you turn it backwards, it's NOBLE. And it's still the most widely used rye across the United States. But we could plant that on these wore out soils, and it would grow very well because it tolerates an acid soil much better. And cattle were worth more than wheat. And one of our first research efforts was not only to develop that rye, but then to use it into a program where you take these weaned calves and put them out on this winter pasture, cereal rye, and then graze them. So that was the beginning of what we know today. Between us and Oklahoma State University, we started the winter pasture stocker cattle program that we know in the Southern Great Plains. So that's where we started and really began to build our reputation. It was off of the work that was related to those type efforts to change a lot of our farm country into cattle country all of a sudden.
Yeah. Kind of sounds familiar.
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of sounds like something that might be happening now.
We can't bet on the fall rainfall like we used to.
Yeah.
But yet at the time it kept people on the land, and it made a lot of farmers productive again and gave them hope for the future. So
yeah,
we were pleased to be a part of it. And then we continued to grow. Our consultation efforts were not only to where we had, instead of an agronomist, we kind of broke that out into an agronomist and a pasture and range person. We also added wildlife and fisheries because wildlife became economically important there in the 80s and then into the 90s. And then we have had a few pecan specialists because down here along the
Red River
pecans. So those were our areas of expertise, and we grew from one team to two teams to three teams. And when they built the fourth team, that's when I got invited to join Noble. So back in 1990,
oh my goodness,
we had four consulting teams. Was continuing to do plant breeding, but we'd also added a plant research effort to better understand, the physiology of the plants. How can we, even got into genetically modified organisms for a little bit, just to understand how can you turn some of the genes on and off in order to have a more resilient plant against drought or disease or pests. So it was an interesting time, but all that kind of wound down here about 2017 when we set off on the new direction where we are today.
Okay, which is?
Today, our focus centers around what we call, and this is our term, regenerative ranching, which all it really is just grazing land stewardship for improved soil health and business success, ranch business success. We just try to keep it simple. Our mission almost is that almost word for word, but that's exactly what we want to do. Is we want to help keep people on the land, in the ranch industry. So we set out to make this change. If you look up, if people want to look up a Ranch Worthy, it's a new little YouTube
Ranch Worthy. Okay.
YouTube series that's
we'll put a link. We'll put a link in the notes.
Okay. Yeah. Jeff Goodwin down at Texas A&M, him and his program has started that interviewing ranchers, and talking a little bit about some of the successes in what we consider the regenerative ranching industry. And they've included us on episode 5, some of our ranch people. And then on episode 10, our president and CEO talks a little bit more about the history of Noble and why we're doing what we're doing today. But in 2019, our current president became president. He really wanted to, and I say he did. You can kind of back that out. Back in 2019, when Steve became president, he sat down with the board, and the board said, "Look,
Okay.
For years, Noble has just centered around that southern Great Plains, just that area around, 100-mile, the counties that touch a 100-mile radius, east and west, north and south. And so that's where we spent most of our time." The board said, in this day and time, what would it take to be a national organization that could have real impact? So they put together a committee of national ag leaders that included the likes of Jason Roundtree at Michigan State, Bert Tigert, that retired from the Deseret Ranch, Tom Field at the University of Nebraska, Jason Lusk, who's there now at Oklahoma State University, and sir, I mean, there was 8 or 9 members that were on this team, and with the charge, go back and review everything that Lloyd Noble had written about rebuilding, rejuvenating the soil, rejuvenating the businesses for the producer, and look at our resources, look what our strengths are, and then go back to that book, Good to Great by Jim Collins. And in there it says, you find that the BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. Find that one thing that you can be best in the world at. And what they asked is, we don't want to be best in the world, just best in the United States. What can we be the best at? And they came back with that thought is that grazing, land, soil health, and ranch profitability is where you need to hang your hat. And then as a result, that's where we have focused all our efforts. We've retrained our people. We outsourced all our breeding and research, and really begin to hone in what does regenerative ranching, what does grazing, land, soil health, and business profitability mean to us at Noble? How are we going to be able to share that with producers across the country through education? And how do we have research that would support the work that we're doing, and then have demonstration ranches that basically demonstrate the work that we're doing? Actually have the show and tell here on our own ranches. So that's where we are today.
That is really an amazing story. I just sitting here, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I need to look up this, and this. What do you think prompted the board to do this? Like, because I don't know, and I think about the entity that I'm, Sarah, that Lacey and I have been managing, and think, man, it's, sometimes it's hard to narrow in on, you see all of these needs and different avenues where you could help meet these needs, but then you're like, okay, you have the finger in all these things, but are you really making a big impact? I mean, what can I spend my time on that will make the largest impact?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. And how it sort of came about was that back in 2017, we became an ag research organization. It's very similar legislation that you would have for a medical research organization.
Okay.
What they did is separated our endowment from our operating entities. And in doing so, now as the 501c3, we can now accept donations, and in-kind money is a lot easier as long as it goes toward our operations.
Okay.
Just like a medical research organization. In fact, our president and CEO was our attorney at the time who drafted that legislation. He understands it really well. So now we can do that, and that's why they wanted to have greater impact. So part of that impact, just like you would do on the ranch, you would want an assessment. So they assessed where we were getting the biggest bang for their money that they were investing into our operations.
Yeah, where are we making the biggest difference?
Yes, ma'am. So we were spending millions in science development, plant breeding, and when they had the analysis come back, it was making, as best they could come up with, hundreds of thousands of dollars return for millions of dollars investment per year across the country. Not just to Noble. Noble, we were We were just looking at what
Right.
would benefit
Right. What's,
the United
yes.
States.
Right.
And where they felt like they were getting the biggest return was their producer activities, their producer efforts.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that one thing that we could do to impact producers then? And what we did when we decided to make this change in direction is we set up all the scientists we had, because we had quite a few of them. They had really good programs. They were world renowned. They were well known. So we put them into universities or plant breeding programs somewhere across the United States to where they could be successful. So we took about 18 months to make sure that we could place them well within these different entities so they can continue to do what they were basically to do and do it even better, because now you're with like people.
Right.
And we reined ourselves in, went from about 400 employees down to about 150 over that period of time.
Y'all had 400 employees?
We had 400 employees. Most of them were research lab type people.
Wow.
And what we went back to is to, what do we really need? But first, we need to be well trained in what do we want to be in this whole, what I call holistic, which is kind of my background, understanding holistic resource management. And this regenerative ranching, what does it want to include? So we did an assessment as to, what are the trainings that were available to where whoever was going to remain with us, whether they were going to be advisors or consultants, were they going to work, whether they're working on the ranches or conducting research.
Right.
We wanted to go through the best of training as complete as we could in as short a period of time as we could. So the board agreed with our president, let's spend about a year just really conducting training amongst ourselves. And during that period of time, we were going to change our ranch operations, where I was involved, to where we were going to remove all the chemicals and the fertilizer, a lot of the inputs, and get back to where we were working more with nature and rely on inputs so that we could reduce our cost. And then learn to manage, more effectively to enhance our gross margins.
Okay.
So that's where we all started. We all went through understanding ag training here. We had brought them into our company. We went through holistic resource management or savory training with the Savory Institute.
Yes.
Everybody went through the entire training. We had Ranching for Profit come here to Noble and do a short training, and then we sent everybody to a Ranching for Profit school. So we invested a lot of money in our own personal education.
Wow.
And we've continued to provide that training to others, and then we begin to build our own curriculum. It's focused on grazing land soil health, grazing management, and then ranch profitability. Where do we need to start? So that's where our courses are, and our education is built through an instructionally designed program. And that's what we call our Noble Learning Program. And instructional design was something new to me. Most of us that's been around as long as I have, we've learned to go to these programs. You listen to someone talk for 45 minutes. We pull out the little tidbits that are meaningful to us, and we can take that home and work with it. But for most people that aren't in our world that we operate within, you go about 10, 15 minutes and it begins to get lost. Our minds wander.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah.
We all still kind of do that. But through an instructional design training that we've done, and we brought in instructional designers that knew very little about agriculture, pair them up with the subject matter experts in these areas. Now we're going to take people on what we call a learning journey, to where you have 10 to 15, maybe 20-minute segments where you're covering the concept in a group setting, because we'll have these courses where people are sitting with a group at different tables. Now we're going to talk about it within the group to be sure that we understood what was being taught. How do you put it into perspective that is meaningful to everyone at the table? And then we spend time, what does it mean to you for your operation? Reflect on your operation.
So these are in person?
These are in-person courses. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So that's how we go about it, and we've got it designed, and then we try to keep it within 2 to 3 days. because
Okay.
most of us
Right. Don't have the time.
we don't have the time
Hmm.
and kind of a limited attention span if you're talking to me.
Right. I know. IDD right here.
So that's the way we designed it. So our courses are 2 to 3 days long, and we have people that come here. We have more courses that are across the United States. We try to find partners. That's part of my job now. Is we try to find partners that want us to bring our education to their area, to their producers, because in reality, we're not going to have subject matter experts all across the country.
Right.
But what we will have is really good facilitators to facilitate the conversation. And our facilitators for the education programs aren't sitting there telling you what you need to do or how to do it. What they're doing is bringing the principles together, and that's what we teach, is principles, and we let the people there that are the subject matter experts in that area and just the producers go through this group think exercise as to
Yes.
is the practices as they align through our soil health principles, for example, or what we call our ranch profitability essentials, our grazing principles, making sure all this sort of fits together. We can guide the conversation as facilitators that let the group kind of determine what that would really look like as far as practices that they apply.
Right. Because so much of it is, and I think that's something that people, I mean, at first when people start talking about regenerative, I remember all I hear would be like, well, it works fine if you live where Gabe Brown lives. But if you don't live where Gabe Brown lives, if you live over in the desert, it doesn't work, And then he really began to emphasize its location based.
Yes.
You have to take have to take these general ideas and figure out how they fit in your region area specifically.
And that's what it is. If you look at the soil health principles, it was an understanding ag that truly put the sixth principle in there, context. Yes. You really need to know your context. And we all know what that means. But part of what that really should mean is not only do we understand what is there today, what's the history of your property or the land that you're trying to reach, what was there back when it was first settled.
Right.
Most people aren't sure what that might have looked like. I can really be certain, but there are historic accounts that give you an indication of what that would look like. It's kind of nice to know. Same thing, your weather, your climate, most people know kind of about what it is, the averages, but you understand the variation because that's where you manage within the variations.
Right. Yes.
Cycle, same thing. You got to understand the variations. Where are you? How do you need to leverage yourself? And that's what these trainings, this education is to help bring those concepts together and talk through that to where the producers, instead of focusing on that one thing that they really want to emphasize, which, in the beef cattle industry, it's their cow herd. Everybody loves their cattle. And then all of a sudden they start getting names and they can't get sold. They think their cows are better than all the other cows. We have these mindsets, these biases that we create for ourselves that actually limit.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, confirmation bias, you decide what you want to be true, and then you find ways to confirm that truth.
You bet. So that's what we're doing. We're hopefully changing the mindsets of producers to be more open and not be locked into, let's find that easy button. Okay. All these best management practices that we've been taught for eons, when a lot of those best management practices were created, we had a different set of economics within our ag industry. Fertilizer was really, really cheap when we started making a lot of these recommendations. Feed was relatively cheap. Now, feed today is relatively cheap compared to what it has been, but inputs are not.
No.
We've become more dependent on chemicals and how did we operate before? All these regenerative ideas and concepts aren't, they're not new. We're just trying to bring them forward and then hopefully leverage the understanding that we've gained over the years to know when to use some of these tools, because they're still tools. We're not saying don't use them, but be sure that you understand the true benefit that you're going to achieve by doing it. Don't do it just because it's a best management practice for your area.
Well, you know, and what I think is really interesting about the idea that you guys, how you're doing this, how you're going about this, which is this peer to peer, you know, farmers around the table figuring it out. And what I think about, it's Patagonia that did a survey of, you know, what prevents farmers from implementing different practices. And number one on their survey was social pressure, and number two was economics. So those two things, I do think they kind of go neck and neck. You know what I mean? I think in some years one will trump the other, but that helps to maybe alleviate some of that. What will my neighbor think? Kind of.
Well, and I think it does. What we've seen is that the producer that can explain why he's doing it is a lot more comfortable than one that's not.
Interesting.
Because
Yes.
if you're going to go against
Right.
the grain, you need to understand why
Yeah.
you're going against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can point back to, in many
Yes.
cases, that this is a lot more cost effective for me because I
Right.
understand what my costs are, because most ranchers, believe it or not, do not understand the costs or the returns. They talk about revenues, but they can't tell you the margins because they have never evaluated the enterprise. That's why we have
Right.
a ranching for profit model, because
Right.
that's very simple, kind of the back of a napkin type math, to where you apply cost per enterprise, the direct
Mm-hmm.
to the revenues, and then of course, you know, if your inventory changes, be able to factor that into it to actually come up with a gross product, and just look at that enterprise and
Mm-hmm.
separate the overheads completely as you begin to have that initial evaluation.
Right.
If you can't pass that test, you know, if it's not
Right.
profitable at that level, you know, why bother bringing in the question about overheads, because there's nothing being contributed to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like to be able to say I'm profitable enough in my enterprises that I'm operating. I know what my return to overheads, you return to land and labor, which is
Yeah.
the majority of the overhead cost.
Wow. So I guess as I think through like what it would look like here to transition, and I think about how many acres are we going to, like, how can it be profitable? Say if you're a farmer and you grow and you're on 3,000 acres and you say, okay, I'm going to convert back a third of that. Like, are you going to make any money on 1,000 acres of cattle? How are we going to do that? How's this going to work out?
Well, and in your situation where you have a lot of cropland in your part of the country,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little different than we are in this part of the United States, or where we're focusing on grazing land, because those are typically marginal croplands at best. And most of the grazing land that's out there should not be in farm or cropland production to begin with.
Right. Well, and I mean, we've got so much. First of all, if you could graze CRP,
Oh,
dumbest
yes,
law on the books.
yes. If you can't graze it, you know, and I understand why they first put that in there, but they didn't give you any wiggle room in order to make that adjustment, because at some point it needs to be grazed.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to graze it out. There needs to be some limitations. But to me, it's the same thing as when people have put land into CRP,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be able to graze it. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
I think that if they're going to take it out of CRP, then they need to pay back what was given to them to plant it to begin with. That would keep a lot of that land from being converted back to farmland.
That's an interesting idea, because that is one of the things I've wondered about is, like you said, if you invest and, you know, how you say you have a project here where you're saying we're going to invest and help, you know, you convert, I don't know, 1,000 acres to native grasses, and we'll help you, maybe purchase cattle, or we'll might help you with like some no fencing type, things like that. And then what happens when the price of cotton is over $1?
Yes. And then
You
you
know,
start putting it out. Yeah, that's that. So there lies sort of the problems that we see
right?
some of the farm bill outcomes that we have that are sort of legs to us.
Mhm.
There could be some improvements. Hopefully we'll make some improvements over time. We have to operate with what we have. And that's part of what we want to focus on here through our education is, we got to make do with what we have.
Mhm.
We've got to have a vision to the future of where we want to be.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah. And I think this, for me, I keep thinking like resilience keeps coming to my mind. Like, how can we, if we're more diverse, if our income is coming from more places and not just one source, then we have a little more resilience, wiggle room, but if we're just, if we're completely relying on one, insurance check, what happens if we now have another flip of the administration and things change again? And you know what I mean? So, which I mean, I think that could happen any 4 years,
it
you know?
sort of has been happening that way about every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. And you start, it all goes back to, the 70s when Earl Butz says, get big or get out.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody began to farm at a big scale and become really good at farming one or two products. The problem is that
Right.
when you do that, you don't have the diversity that farmers and ranchers had prior to that time. To
Mm-hmm.
where one crop wasn't doing real well, something else might, but you didn't have these big boom and bust cycles that we see today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
inherently there are some problems within that system.
Mm-hmm.
But our whole ag commodity markets are set up centered around that whole program. Our
Mm-hmm.
farm bills, our insurance programs, all
Mm-hmm.
that is set up to support that
Yes.
food, cheap fiber.
Right.
It,
Right.
it's not helping the resiliency of the land nor the resiliency of the business.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, actually, well, the podcast will be released before this podcast. We actually were talking about the history of the American agricultural movement.
Cool.
And yeah, super interesting. They actually have a reunion here in Lubbock every January.
I see.
And so I got to go, was a couple weekends ago, and it was so interesting. My dad was part of that. But what you're talking about now is actually part of the conversation that we had about Secretary Butts and his encouraging people to grow fence row to fence row. Although the guy said he couldn't find anywhere where he couldn't find an actual original source where he said that. He's like, I couldn't find an actual quote. So now I'm like super curious about
The other word,
what he
get
said.
big or get out, that quote.
Yeah, or fence row to fence row.
Okay, fence row front. I
Yeah.
haven't seen that one, but I have seen the one that said
Mhm.
get big, get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one's out there somewhere.
Right. Well, and that's what happened. That's
Well,
exactly what happened. And that's where the position that we're in, I feel like definitely the policies that we have in place for agriculture have driven the decisions that have had to be made in order to keep farming.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm pretty excited right now though that we have the focus back on I call it the regenerative agriculture
Mhm.
efforts by Secretary Rollins and then of course
Mhm.
Secretary Kennedy. You got those two
Mhm.
up there.
Right.
We just inverted the food pyramid, which I'm delighted to hear.
Right. Right.
There's just a lot of positives that if you're into agriculture, I think that we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah.
I,
I think you're right. I mean, I think this is an opportunity and if we can figure out how to, a lot of the money that was that IRA money was I mean, I thought they were going to just take all that money out and get rid of it, but they left it there for conservation.
Mhm.
And so I think that's 37 billion that's there. But I read an article today about the lack of workforce to implement that. But what I wonder is if they're wanting to shift towards more contracting with organizations like Noble to run some of this rather than it running straight out of the NRCS office.
Well, I think that's all yet to be determined.
Right.
That's what I think some of us are hoping, and I think that's what we're seeing. Uh, what we're seeing put in place already. They had this big retirement that, a lot
Yes.
of the people
Right.
that have the best understanding for
I know.
talk about whole farm planning and that
Mhm.
grant pilot project they just released. You, the people that really have a great understanding or the best understanding in order to do that type of assessments are, they retired.
They took retirement.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
where's this technical assistance going to come from? Yeah, I think there's
Mhm.
opportunities for, like in the grazing world, the National Grazing Lands Coalition, us,
Mhm.
other entities that are out there
Mhm. Right.
whatever their strengths are, try to leverage those within the
Yeah.
communities they tend to operate.
Mhm.
But it'll be yet to be seen. I think they're going to be some hire. I don't think they're going to hire all that they need. They would rather work in
Oh
part
yeah.
with
I
multiple
think,
entities.
because I have some kids that are working for the federal government, one contract and one straight through the federal through the federal government, and that's where I learned. Okay, 2/3 of all the people that work for federal government work through the federal government for the federal government through a contract entity.
Yes,
And so, even when we have a government shutdown, it is important to remember that 2/3 of all government employees are still working.
correct. Correct.
So, but I do think it would be very beneficial to, especially if you had even a little bit of competition that these organizations are like competing for customers almost. You know what I'm saying? Like to say,
Yeah.
hey, you could pick this organization, or you could pick this organization, and then you have, more reason to keep innovating, to keep, pushing things forward and making ideas and things happen for attracting more people to participate. So I think if that is what is happening, I'm 100%.
Well, I think it'll make it more competitive because instead of
Yes.
going out there and just trying to negotiate a deal on the side where you've got basically very little accountability, and you can ask for an arm and a leg for doing little to nothing, which we see in a lot of other areas that
Yes.
I like to see that they're correcting. I think what
Yes.
you get into is you got a lot more exposure, more accountability, and now you're being measured against outcomes, and the winners
Yes. Yes.
going to be the producer when it's all said and done.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
results.
Yes. I have I've met, I would say she is a friend of mine. She is credited for ending the global AIDS epidemic.
Okay.
And basically what happened was that President Bush said, give me all this money back from all these organizations. And he's like, here, you take it and fix it. And it was outcome based. And so you have outcomes, here's the money. But we're not just going to hand over all of the money and see no outcomes.
No, that's right. And this administration in particular is more interested, or appears to be more interested in outcomes than giving money away.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great thing that, I would love to see, because then you also have the ability to say, yeah, you are rude to our customers and you work for us. You should not be rude to your customers.
That's right.
Or you should not have an entity spend $50,000 and hours of labor on easements and then refuse to approve the easements,
Yes.
you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of good that can come out of that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I do. This has been a great conversation, which does not surprise me at all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. We get to talk a little bit about what I know a little bit about, which is most of my
You know a
history.
lot about it.
Yeah, it's
You know a lot about it.
well, thank
But
you.
now I'm all like, okay, so I just took the beef course at Tech. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh my God, please forgive me.
Yeah.
It's at A&M.
Yeah.
Sorry for everyone who is now just completely. I
Yeah.
say I didn't go to college so that I could remain neutral.
Technically,
So-
if we're doing a really good job, it doesn't matter where the education comes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I took the course, and it's not the Beef 101 course, but it's anyway, it was meat judging, meat. I butchered a cow and I loved every minute of it.
Yep.
It was fabulous. Learned so much stuff. And so now I want to come to Noble and take your classes.
We invite you to come join us. We'd love to have you.
It'd be
We're
great.
just beginning to get our courses up on our website. You know, we try to be at least a quarter ahead, so we don't have that many here in the first quarter. You know, so you get into the grazing part of it. We have a lot of field exercises.
Yeah.
We want to be out there when we've got something growing and it's a little more comfortable than it might be during the wintertime or the summer.
Yeah.
So look on our website, www.noble.org.
Okay.
Find a course. There's a little button up there on the right side of our screen, and it'll take you to anything from our land essentials to grazing essentials, business of grazing, profitability essentials, market smart grazing, and then we've just released orchard essentials. And there's a few that'll be online too that it better suits people. Some of those we'll see more of those come up as we get more of those in a online format.
Okay, well, we'll put all that, as always, in the show notes so that people have easy access to it. And thank you so much, Hugh, for giving us your time.
Well, Tillery, it's been fun. It's always fun to visit with you, and hopefully,
always enjoy it.
Listeners will enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed visiting.
Yes, and we will be rescheduling the NASA Acres tour that was supposed to happen in the fall. So we will be coming. It sounds like maybe we might be looking at August, September of next year. We don't know for sure, but we'll be making some of those decisions soon-ish. So we will bring those folks to you. I enjoyed it, Hugh. Thanks.
All right. Well, you have a great time.
You too. And thanks, friends, for joining us again for this conversation with Hugh and this episode of Conservation Stories. I hope that you will take a minute to look over the Noble Research Institute's website and see if some of that information will be helpful to you. I'm sure that if you've always farmed and you're looking at having to diversify into cows, even though you've never wanted to ranch, opposite of what Hugh wanted, it will probably be of good information and help to you. So I look forward to having you all join us again next time on another episode of Conservation Stories.